Today is finally bulb planting day. I'm so excited. Now, I do have to leave a disclaimer, which is that I have struggled with bulbs. In fact, I would say my success rate over the last few years is less than 50%. However, each year I learned something different that I should do, so I'm gonna keep trying until I run out of any improvements that I can make. So I'm gonna split this video into 3 parts, and I will put timestamps down below in case you wanna skip a few of them. But the first section is going to be me talking about everything I've learned the last 3 or 4 winters, trying to overwinter bulbs in containers and preventing them from rotting. So that'll be the first part. Then we'll go over the bulbs that I have. They are chaotically organized around the room, so I know like which category is which, and then we'll go outside and plant. So I'm going to be planting these in the 3 raised beds along the back of the back deck because I like the idea, assuming they don't all rot over winter, of seeing them come up with the church in the background. So that's what I'm hoping to have happen next spring. So first, let's go into the history of me trying to grow bulbs in my container garden. Now, first off, I would say the king of growing bulbs in containers is Klaus Dalby. He does have YouTube and Instagram. I will link them somewhere down below. And I watched him first, and he said that he plants the bulbs and then completely covers them for winter. So that's what my plan was, but of course I can't move my raised beds. So I went to the garden center, again, I think this was 3 winters ago, got some bulbs, asked them there if I need to cover it, and they said no, they said it should be fine. So I planted bulbs, and I'll put in pictures if I still have them from a few years ago, but I planted bulbs in 3 of my raised beds, I think out on the front deck, and then more bulbs just in like regular 12-inch pots. I actually had pretty good luck that year with the bulbs coming up in the raised beds. I would say maybe like 80 to 90% of what I planted came up, but everything that was in a smaller container rotted. So I didn't put them anywhere else. I didn't cover them. I just left them outside. All the small containers rotted. So what I learned from that year is that maybe the larger containers, there's a larger mass of soil, so maybe they didn't get quite as condensed or sopping wet as the smaller containers can tend to do. So the next year, I again planted bulbs in the same raised beds on the front. I also planted bulbs in containers, and I put those containers in the garage. That was perfect for the smaller containers. And even though I had good luck the first year, I think I had maybe 5 tulip bulbs come up in my raised beds. So they did not work out the second winter. I don't know if maybe the second winter was more wet than the previous winter, but I did not have any luck leaving them uncovered in my raised beds, which brings us to last winter when I decided to plant them all in the same 3 beds we're going to be planting in. I tarped them, I brought the smaller containers down to the garage, and then they started to sprout in the garage, so I brought them outside, and we had such a wet spring that I moved them out too early. So I moved them out when the shoots were coming above the soil in the smaller pots. So I know that they had overwintered fine, they survived in the garage. I moved them outside, and we had a lot of rain, and I thought maybe it was okay because they'd spent the winter in the garage, but no, the bulbs rotted, and I can tell that because 1, it stops growing, and then 2, I dig for the bulb and it feels mushy. So I've learned not to move things out from the garage too early. Now for the 3 lower beds, I did tarp them, which I'm gonna do again this year, but I realized my mistake was as soon as the bulbs started to peek through the soil, I needed to take the tarp off. And I had bulbs that were blooming early spring, middle spring, late spring. So as soon as early spring they started to come up, I uncovered them. Same thing. It rained so much that spring that a few of the early bulbs came up and didn't rot. A lot of the mid and late season bulbs did rot. So what I'm going to do differently this year is 1, I am still going to move the pots that I can carry to the garage, and I will wait to move them out until we're a bit later in spring, or if I bring them up, I will put them in the greenhouse to protect them from the rain. The raised beds, which again I cannot move, I am going to tarp and maybe use a piece of my old greenhouse to protect one of them, but I'm going to put something which I think will be a tomato cage on top. I think with the tomato cage on it, and if this doesn't make sense now, it will make sense once we actually do it today, but I think they could grow to at least like 6 to 8 inches without me having to like lay the tarp back down. So I can take the tarp off if it's not raining and then lay it back down on top just with the tomato cages on it. So I think that's what I'm gonna try to do. If it doesn't work this year and I don't learn anything I could do differently, I will probably stop trying to plant bulbs in the fall and just switch to getting pre-sprouted bulbs from Home Depot or other garden centers in the spring. So that is something you can do. If you didn't plant your bulbs this fall, or if, like me, they rotted, go to a garden center in the spring. They'll have sprouted tulips. You can take them and then just plant them in your own containers. So that is the plan, and that is the history of me trying to grow bulbs. Now we'll go into the more exciting part where I will show you all the bulbs that I got. Now, not all of these bulbs have pictures on the packages, so I will put in images of what each of them look like. And I also do have an Excel spreadsheet, because I love Excel, to keep myself organized. So I'm gonna start first with the bulbs that I will be planting in regular gray pots, but I'm not gonna do that today, but I love them. So I'm going to show you what they are. I have 5 of the Tulip Nightmare bulbs. These are black, and I really love black flowers because I feel like they're very unique. So since there's only 5, I don't think it makes sense to put them mixed into a large container because they'll get overwhelmed. So these 5 are gonna go into a pot. I just don't know which pot yet. So these I'm holding on to until I do pot up just the individual containers. And then I have 2 bags of Chinatown, and I think there are 35 between these 2 bags. So these are gonna go in the 4 gray pots that I have out back. I'll show you, but again, not planting these up today. But in the 4 gray pots, I will bring them into the garage and hope that they all survive, because I saw these in a parkway, just a walk around the neighborhood. I took a picture, I Googled it, and I fell in love. And they're really pretty. They have pink flowers, and then the leaves have a white border. So I'm really, really hoping I don't kill these this year. All right, now let's move on to the early spring bulbs. I don't have a ton, so all of these are gonna go in the center raised bed only, but I have single snowdrops. There are 15 bulbs in here. These are from Gethsemane Garden Center, so I got these in person. The last 2 that I showed you, I got from Dutch Grown. So I ordered those online. But I have single snowdrops, 15 bulbs here. I have 10 snow crocus right there. I have 10 more snow crocus, so 20 total. And then I have 7 double snowdrops. So these are gonna go all clustered in the center raised bed. It's really great to provide something early in the garden because some bees do wake up early. They're looking for sources of pollen. So having these, if they don't rot in my containers, is a great option. So these should be the first ones that come up next year. They also, because they're much smaller than the tulip and daffodil bulbs I have, these only need to go, I think it's 3 inches deep. Yeah, 3 inches deep, and that is from the bottom of the bulb, not the top. So I'll make a hole 3 inches deep and put the bulbs in there. So those are gonna be the last ones I plant, because everything else that I'm about to go into is 5 to 6 inches, and I'm just gonna go with 6 inches for all of them and plant those first in all 3 beds, and then just the center bed will have all of these early blooming bulbs. Next, I have 25 purple sensation alliums. The alliums actually did survive the spring weather, so I had them in smaller pots, the gray pots that I'm gonna use again, overwintered in the garage, brought them out in the spring with the other plants, but these bulbs didn't rot like my tulips and daffodils did. So these I am gonna plant in the 3 raised beds. I'm gonna split these among the 3 beds as evenly as I can for 25 bulbs, but they're gonna go in the back. Now they are the later blooming of the bulbs that I have, so I might have the tulips and daffodils first, but because these are gonna be so much taller, and I just think it'll be pretty to have a border along the back of the raised beds, these I'm gonna specifically plant just along the back. And again, these are also 5 to 6 inches deep. Now, everything else that I'm gonna go through, I'm going to mix together so that all 3 beds have the same types of bulbs. I was originally thinking, like, do I want a pink bed, an orange bed, but I think I would rather have 3 beds that all look similar for a larger impact. So everything else that I go through, I'm going to divide them into 3 baskets, and a basket will be planted into each raised bed. So first up of the bulbs that I'm going to mix all together in the beds is narcissus or daffodils. I have 25 bulbs. They are a mix of white, yellow, and orange. These I would probably say have rotted the easiest. Like in times where maybe I had a 50% success rate with tulips, all of my daffodils died or rotted. So I don't know if they are more susceptible to rot than tulips, but that's just been my experience so far. But I have 25 of these I'm gonna split up. And then I think the rest are all tulips because I love tulips so much. I have here a bag of Tulip Bright Sunshine Mix. I have 25 total of these. Again, a mixture of colors, yellow, oranges, pinks. Then I have Tulip Darwin Hybrid 25 bulbs. And they are, again, I'll put in pictures here, but they're kind of like an orangey, pinky yellow. So again, that same color scheme. Next bag is Tulip Spring Break Blend, but spring is spelled with a Y. 25 of these as well. Oh, I love this one too. I don't remember if I tried it last year and it rotted or if I just fell in love with it online this year, but this is Tulip Renown Unique. I have 25 of these bulbs as well. They are a pinky color, so I'm really, really hoping that these do survive. Well, I'm hoping everything survives, but especially these in the Chinatown. And then I think our last bag in here, oh, I love this one too, is the Tulip Pretty Princess. And this is like a pinky purple. I also have 25 of these. So everything from the daffodils on, I'm gonna open the bag. I have 3 baskets laid out on the ground, and I'm just going to divide them as evenly as I can between the 3. And then that way I know one basket has a good mix to go into the beds. And I'm excited and nervous because I only really get one shot at this. And if I learn something didn't work, I can't try it or test it again until the next year. So I'm hoping what I do this year, fingers crossed, results in a bed full of bulbs. These are the 3 baskets that I'm gonna be using. I love getting baskets from thrift stores. I just think that the older the basket, the cooler it looks. This one here I actually got, and I think it was $20. And then when I took it to the front, they were telling me how it was like made 100+ years ago from the peanut plant. So this one doesn't really go outside. I think this is the first time I will actually be like taking it out into the garden, but it's not something that I put a lot of crops that I harvest in because I do want to keep it as clean as possible. I put all these on the top of my bookshelves, and I am going to ban a basket buying ban because I have more baskets than I need for the size garden that I have. But maybe once I plant in the garage deck, I'll need more. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is go ahead, and all of these bulbs are the tulips and the daffodils that I'm going to plant. So I'm just going to go, well, I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to open each bag. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and continuing that. Now, I don't think any of the bulbs come in a packet that is easily divisible by 3. So when I get to the end of this and there's extra, I don't want to keep tossing the extra into the same basket because I want to try to have a similar amount of bulbs across all 3. So I'm just going to put the extras to the side, and then I will evenly distribute those into the baskets. Now, do you have to be that specific about it? No, but I like organization, and that's what I'm going to do. So there are 25 daffodils. I have 1 left, which is already sprouting, so that's a good sign that I know the bulbs are alive. I'm going to set this here. Some other things that I have learned from my experience with bulbs. Don't order them on Amazon. Now, maybe that was just my one experience, but which one are these that I'm putting in? I'm putting in now the Tulip Spring Break Blend, but I don't know if I had forgotten to order bulbs or what it was, but it was late in the season, so I ordered some from Amazon. They came, they smelled funny, they were covered in mold, and some of them were slightly squishy, which none of those 3 are descriptors you want when you're looking at bulbs. But I planted them anyway, because I figured the worst thing that happens is that they don't bloom at all, but I'm not gonna have blooms anyway, even if I don't plant them. So I did. Nothing came up. They were all rotten. So I would not trust Amazon. I have purchased bulbs and liked the results from Dutch Grown. That's probably where I purchased the most of them from. And then Color Blends, I have purchased some from, and then just going into the garden center. And then that way you can actually see the bulbs themselves. And if they do look healthy, there's not usually as many varieties that are available. Like typically, what I have seen at the garden center is a lot of mixes or like pretty standard, like solid purple, solid pink, but you can get some really cool blends by looking online. And again, you could order probably now and they would send them to you immediately, but you can order as early as you want. And I would recommend ordering earlier, even like July, maybe, as soon as you know what you want to plant for the fall, because some do sell out. Some of the more popular ones. This bulb looks interesting. We'll see if you grow or not, but since that one looks kind of weird, I'll put another one in there. So like I said, I ordered these, I think in June, and they just got sent to me in October. Now this is 100% later than I would normally plant my bulbs, probably by 2 to 3 weeks. And that's because we've had such unseasonably warm weather that everything's been behind. I've emptied out my beds later than normal, and when you're working in a container garden or small garden, oftentimes you have to wait for things to be pulled before you have space to plant new things. So now that I've emptied out the 3 beds in the back, these are going to be planted. And then the leftover ones, I have 6. So we'll put 2 extras in each. And now to hopefully get a good mix when I plant them, I'm just going to give them a little stir so that they're more evenly distributed. Also, when you're planting in containers, I would say ignore all spacing recommendations. I like to fill mine as much as possible. So even in pots, I will plant them like almost touching. I don't know, I'll have to lay them out. I don't know how close I'll have to put them in the raised beds, but yeah, in the pots, I will put them so that they are touching each other, and they do just fine. As far as what I do after, I dig them up because again, I need to dig up the plants to fit new plants in there, and I think they would rot from all of the water that I'm giving the plants over the summer. But I pop them up and I plant them down in the parkway. And not all of them come back, but I have had a pretty good success rate. They come back. So that's always good for me if I can put tulips down there. So that's my plan. I will dig them up after they're done flowering while the leaves are still green, plant them down there. I have a whole video on this I will link down below to show you the process. And then you don't want to cut them back in spring until the leaves are yellow and die back, because when the leaves are still green, they're gathering energy into the bulb to make it through till next year. So don't cut the green back. But like I said, I will dig them up when the leaves are green and then plant them down the parkway. So they're still getting that sun. And then once the leaves die back, everything gets cut down. All right, so I have everything split up into these 3. Let's bring everything outside and start planting. It's still like 50 degrees, so not that cold. These are the beds where I'm going to be planting all of the bulbs. So I have a basket for each bed. Alliums I'm going to do all across the back. But the first thing I'm going to do is add some bulb tone. This is not required, but it is bulb food for the bulbs. And I am assuming I'm not going to rot most of them this year. So they are going to need this. I don't even know if I bothered doing it last year because I'd killed so many the year before. Now the instructions on here say apply 1.5 heaping teaspoons around each bulb. I am going to do the lazy way and just sprinkle a handful across the soil on top of all of these beds and assume that when I dig the holes, the food will fall in and be available for the bulbs. So if you want to follow the specific instructions, you may do that. I am going to do the lazy gardener way. Bulb tone down, so next I'm going to lay out the allium bulbs again along the back. Now, these beds, I always think in my head they're larger than they are, but they're really only like maybe 3 feet long and a foot deep or a foot wide. So I might be able to get these closer than I'd imagined, but there are, how many in here? 25. So again, I'm going to do probably 8, 8, and 9. And fingers crossed, I have a really beautiful allium border here next spring. I know I'm doing an odd number of bulbs and I want one kind of in the center. I'm not going to worry too much about spacing, but when I want to for the border at least. I know this is the center of the bed, so I know that I'm going to put there. And then I tend to go from, well, this is where I've left an anemone in that I'm hoping comes back. So I'm going to put this one back here and then go into the corners. And I'm not burying them yet. They need to be 6 inches deep. I'm going to wait till I have everything laid out and then bury everything at once. So then I need to here, be like I dropped one, 3 between the center here and the edge. These are going to have 8, So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me take you up a little bit closer on this bed. So with the bulbs, most of the time I feel like it is pretty easy to tell which is the top or which is the bottom. Some bulbs, like this for example, have a pointy end, and that always goes to the top. Now the allium bulbs are a little bit more symmetrical, but you can see where the roots are coming out of. So these need to go down. If the roots weren't here and I really couldn't tell what was the top or the bottom, just plant it on the side. That's the best bet instead of accidentally planting it upside down. But I feel like for the most part, it usually is pretty easy to tell what's the top and what's the bottom. So 8 in this bed, again, just finding where the roots are and placing those down. I did not space these well at all, which is a good part about me not burying them yet, is that I can adjust the positioning. All right, alliums are all in. We'll stay focused on this bed for now because I didn't do the chop and drop here because I had just the plant laying on it for the birds to eat, the celosia. So I think it's a little bit easier to see. But I think what I'm gonna do, I don't know if I just want to toss them in or kind of spread them around. Maybe I'll just do, I don't really care about spacing too much for these. Like the alliums, I know I have a certain number. I know I want them in a certain area. But then everything else here, I'm just kind of gonna throw around and then bury them. Again, making sure I have the correct side up. But yeah, I think this bed is gonna be pretty well filled with just everything that I have here. I would recommend a hori hori knife for anybody that works in the garden because it has inches here, so I know how deep I need to dig down. So basically what I'm gonna do, it goes 1 through 6. I'm just gonna go up to a bulb. This one, for example. Now these I do want in this specific place, but I'm gonna go down. I'm going to move it over because I went down 6 inches, and I'm going to put that in there. And there we go. So we're just gonna keep doing this until all the bulbs in this bed are planted. Alliums are in. Now these, I'm just gonna kind of go haphazard, burying these down. So that's one bed down, which feels exciting. I'm gonna do the exact same process on the other 2 beds. And to not bore you, I will skip over that part in the video, and then you will see me again when we are ready to plant the bulbs that are gonna be only 3 inches deep. I also need to know why I decided a white sweater was what I would wear to plant bulbs, because even though I rolled up my sleeves, I feel like my arms are going down enough that it's starting to get dirty. But all 3 beds are planted with the 6-inch bulbs. So now I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna grab the 3-inch bulbs. Again, those are just gonna go in the center because if I split them out, they look too sparse and odd. And plus, this is really the only one I can see when I'm inside. Oh, she's flying away from a hawk. It's one thing I learned is that hawks do eat pigeons. Hasn't happened yet to any of the ones I know of. Fingers crossed. Anyway, so I'm gonna put all of them in this bed. It's the one I can see from inside. So that was my plan. Let's go ahead and grab them. We'll get them planted, tarped, and that'll be everything. Here are the smaller bulbs that are only going 3 inches deep. So again, I have 20 total of the snow crocus. Let's lay you out first. Just spreading them around. 15 of these snowdrops. And 7 of the double snowdrops. I think the doubles look really pretty. So now I'm using my hori hori knife again, clean that off, and I'm just gonna go down to the 3-inch mark for each of these. So that's why it's so easy, and I really love using the hori hori knife for this. Now, I do think these are probably more susceptible to rot just because they're smaller. So I am probably the most worried about these of all the ones that I'm planting, but we shall see. I'm trying to remember, I think I got at least a couple last year that did end up surviving. Oh, that's a little too deep. 3 inches, there we go. But yeah, if I can provide a source of pollen for any of the early bees, I will gladly do that. All right, now that should be all of them, but because they are small, I tend to miss them, like this one. So I'm just gonna go do another once over and make sure that I haven't missed any. All right, I think we are looking good. So the next task then is to tarp, because I need to get it covered before any more moisture comes. Now, I'm not exactly sure what my plan is yet. We're gonna figure it out as we go along. But I do know that the tarp I used last year didn't quite cover all 3. So I'm gonna use it to cover 2, I think, we'll see. And then I have this greenhouse from last year, since I upgraded to a longer greenhouse, because somehow I keep accumulating more plants. But I'm gonna see if I can get this onto the one on the edge. So let's see how this works. I think as far as a cover for this raised bed, it's going to work, but I need to put something in here so that when it snows or rains, it's not sitting directly on the bulbs. That way I can let the bulbs grow a little bit before I need to take the tarp off. So I'm gonna put 2 cages in here of the shorter ones. All right, it doesn't look the prettiest, but I think it's gonna function how I want it to. To keep this in place, basically what I do is just set grow bags and pots on it. That's what I did last year. So let me see. The zinnia grow bags will be perfect because I left the soil in them, so they're still heavy, but there's no plant in them that I need to overwinter. Basically, to keep it down, I just do that. I'm gonna make sure that grow bag is completely sitting on the plastic just to protect the wooden deck. Oh, and then with the part back here, I'm just scooting the bed back so that it's pinching the greenhouse cover up against the wall. I have 2 tomato cages that I'm going to use, one for each of these beds. The length actually works out pretty well. I hate them. Well, hate's a strong word. I dislike them very much. They're from Home Depot because they're so flimsy that they can't hold up a tomato plant. And if you're going to be a tomato cage, I feel like you should be able to hold up a tomato plant, but I might be able to repurpose it for these. So I'm going to lay one down there, one down here, and then you will have to move out of there so I can tarp. My garden is just getting more beautiful by the day. It is kind of sad to look at and see this, but it is what it is. I am going to put the celosia, actually let's do that now, because the sparrows are still visiting and eating off of this. So that'll go there. And then yeah, the tomato cages are keeping this up off of the bulbs. And even if one sprouts where the tomato cage is laying, the cage itself is so thin that I think it can just go around it. Whereas when the tarp was laying on it, so when it snows or rains, the tarp goes flat onto the soil and they would definitely just be pushing up and not be able to go anywhere. So I'm, fingers crossed, that this time it works. I do like the idea of the greenhouse cover because I can see through that, so I can see how everything is doing. During the spring when things start sprouting, these I will have to lift up, but that's not that big of a deal. I am going to, once again, I'm cleaning everything out, get more pots lined up against this just so this doesn't blow away. I'll wheel this one over for now. So that's what I plan to do, just line up pots along this. It worked perfectly fine last year. I didn't have anything blow away. And I'm excited. I'm hoping this works out. I feel like I've said that a million times, but if what's in my head actually grows out here, I will be so happy. So let me know down below if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any other tips, how you've prevented your bulbs from rotting if you do live in a place where the winters and springs are pretty wet. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.